Hello, everyone. Richard here at Calhoun, where books can be at times timeless and at other times appalling. And I have three recent reads. I have been unpacking books and getting them organized and getting bookshelves, new shelves for uh, getting them all set up. And I've came across a couple of books that one I knew I had for a long time, and the other two I was like, oh, I wonder what these are. And they were fairly short books, and I thought, well, let's give them some reads before I sit down and start reading my next significant read. And the first one here is a collection of essays called New Mexico, the Shining Land. So this is John L. Sinclair. And it was published in the early 1980s. I think there was a hardbound edition that was published in 1980. It says in here, the first paperbound edition published in 1983. And it does have, you know how they have author blurbs? There was one by Frank Waters on the back here, and Frank Waters is one of my favorite writers. He called it a beautiful book, a grassroots source that will serve us all for years to come. What I really like about this book is, all right, as I said, it was published in, the early 1980s, and I was living in New Mexico at that time. So when it is talking about how, current Santa Fe is, or Albuquerque, or some of these other places, and drawing a contrast between earlier and colonial times for these places, it was done so in a way that I could recognize what Sinclair was talking about. And it was easy read, as I said, it's a collection of essays, so it's a good read to sit down, read a couple of them and enjoy. And it's got a lot of history in here. There's a chapter about Lincoln, New Mexico. There's one about White Oaks, and this is an area where I used to live. In fact, I worked for the Rio Doso News and had covered events in Lincoln, New Mexico, and the Billy the Kid history and the people that were alive then who were very much involved in preserving that history and exploring that history. And then White Oaks, a ghost town that the chapter or the essay in here about White Oaks was really quite interesting to see everything and learn about how it almost got a railroad, and if it did get the railroad to go through and have a stop, it might not have turned into a ghost town, that kind of thing. And also essays about the various Indian pueblos and the history of the pueblos, the history of the Spaniards coming in. Good read. I really enjoyed this. And as I said, especially for the fact that, it was published during a time when I was living there in New Mexico, and so I could relate to the observations of present day New Mexico in comparison to the older times. So yeah, it was a book that my mother had. I have a lot of books that I inherited from my mother, so gave it a read, and then I may end up I don't know, I'm putting together a couple boxes of books to sell on a garage sale, and I may put this in there for sale. Not really interested in keeping it, but I don't know. Hey, if there's somebody out there who would be interested in reading this, who lives in the continental United States, then, You can have it if you want. Just leave a comment in the down under. The next book, short book I read, was this children's book. This is a children's book. Okay, and it's a very old book. And this is one here, Miss Minerva and William Greenhill. I thought, oh, okay. So, originally published in 1909. This one, I think, is the popular edition that was published in 1915. And I believe it was among my mother's books. And where there is somebody inscribed in it. It says, "To Uncle, hope you will have a good laugh reading this, Dutch." So see that, the inscription that was in there. So I start reading this, and I was thinking, oh, wow, this is a racist book. I hope there's a moral lesson in it, so that by the end of it, this book could redeem itself. But there was no redemption. Yeah, this is filled with racist tropes. It was published during the Jim Crow era, and it describes the Jim Crow era. But it does so with this, it's humor. The storyline is you've got Aunt Minerva, who is a spinster, and William Greenhill, Billy, is this 7-year-old boy who comes to live with her because he is orphaned. And it was her sister, I believe. It's her sister's child. And when, I can't remember who died first, his father or his mother. Might have been his father. But anyway, he was raised in the South alongside some black farmers. I believe they are tenant farmers, okay, because it was still on a big plantation. And this is Jim Crow era, so it's post-slavery, but a lot of blacks, former slaves, continued to work for the plantations as tenant farmers or sharecroppers. And so he grew up in a black family, was raised by them, and so he just, picked up the social norms, cultural norms of that group, and didn't think a thing about it. He comes to Aunt Minerva, who is very prim, proper old maid, but also very racist in her attitude toward blacks. And Billy's attitude, while is not necessarily, I guess, is kind of a Huckleberry Finn attitude, if you know what I mean, in that he is able to live easily among blacks as one of them, but he still has the white cultural attitude. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. But then all these other people, he ends up living in a town now, and I'm thinking this is in Tennessee, where all the other white people are very racist and prejudiced. They're anti-Semitic. There's a Jewish boy character who, it's just all kinds of tropes going on in this book. The author captures beautifully the speech patterns of the children. And what I noticed with this is that these are 7-year-old children who are very intelligent but incredibly ignorant. The language that they're using reveals their ability to think and to take in some information, but their breadth of knowledge is so limited because of the culture and et cetera, that they're really quite stupid in many ways. I mean, there's this one chapter where some guy is like painting the roof of the porch. All right, so we're talking, the turn of the 20th century. So all paint is oil-based paint. And they see, and he finishes painting and he goes inside to talk to Aunt Minerva about painting something else, perhaps, or whatever. Leaves the ladder up, and the kids see the ladder unattended, and they think, oh, let's climb up to the top. And then they climb up to the top of the roof, and there's fresh paint, and they start walking on it, and they get paint all over their feet, and then the guy who is deaf conveniently comes back and takes the ladder away, so that it's just, I mean, it's oil-based paint. It's got oil-based paint has a strong scent. I can't imagine someone being so stupid that when they climb up a ladder and they encounter a freshly painted roof, that they cannot tell that this is a freshly painted roof. But hey, this is how the story is going to work, because it's one chapter of the kids getting in trouble, one after the other, or whatever. Aunt Minerva wants to raise this boy as a girl because he wants him to be civilized. It's just, and I thought, okay, maybe there's going to be a moral turnaround in terms of, especially because of the racism, but no. I mean, the black characters are treated, they're treated respectfully, but they're still treated as less than equal. And it's just, I mean, it's not necessarily racist in terms it's filled with vitriol, but it's still a racist book. And this is a children's book. This was a book, for children, white children, to read. And, this is, certainly there was no enlightenment going on during Jim Crow. I mean, we all know that, but it's just, yeah. So I've got this book, and I was going to put it with the ones I'm setting aside to sell, but I'm like, no, I got to keep this. I cannot inflict this upon other people. I cannot sell this book without telling them, hey, this is a racist book. And by doing that, I know that's going to attract racists. So, what am I going to do? I'm just going to put it back up on the shelf where it shall be. All right, then the third book that I read is one that I've had for a while, but never got around to reading it. And the longer I kept putting it off, the more I kept thinking that this is it's going to be a book trapped in time that will come off being, I don't know, anachronistic, or maybe just so reflective of the time that it was published that it was going to be seriously dated. And that is this one, Reflections of a Rock Lobster, which is a memoir by Aaron Fricke, who made headlines in, the 80s because he took a male date to prom while he was in high school. So it's about growing up gay in Rhode Island, in a suburban community, and dealing with the homophobia and prejudice in school. It talks about the treatment that he received in school, not just by students, but by school leaders and administrators, and his struggle with this. And, reading it, it didn't come off as, it's dated in a way that, yeah, we're talking about the 80s, but it didn't come off as being trapped in its era. I think the book really does have some relevant messages, even, for today. And it's certainly a reminder that we've come a long way. And in current times, we are at risk of going backwards. So it's a good read. And when he took his case to court, because when he decided that he was going to take a boy date with him to prom, he initially went to the school principal to see if he could do that, because the way they had the system rigged is that when you bought a ticket to prom, you had to announce who your date was going to be when you bought the ticket. And of course, he was going to announce it was going to be another boy. And so he first went to the principal's office to ask, and the principal said no. And the principal had established with the entire student body a homophobic attitude. And so he sued the principal in particular. It doesn't explain in here who covered the principal's legal expenses. His legal expenses was covered by a gay advocacy organization. I would really be interested to wonder who paid the legal fees for the principal. Being a principal, I'm thinking the school district probably paid for his legal representation, in which case that meant the taxpayers paid for his legal representation. And of course, he lost. But what I thought was interesting was what the judge said when he ruled in favor of Aaron. And one of the things he said is, any disturbance, Judge Pettine said, would clearly be the fault of those who started it. That was the premise that the defense, the principal, was saying, that by allowing him to take a boy as his date to prom, it would create the high likelihood of a retaliatory response by the other students attending prom. Ergo, his physical well-being would be endangered. So Pettine said any disturbance would clearly be the fault of those who started it, not of Paul and me. This is Aaron speaking. To decide otherwise would be to grant students a, quote, heckler's veto, allowing them to decide through prohibited and violent methods what speech will be heard, end quote. The First Amendment, ruled Judge Pettine in his most widely quoted statement, quote, does not tolerate mob rule by unruly school children, end quote. And that reminded me so much of something that Thurgood Marshall had said which I read in the biography, The Devil in the Grove. It was the same thing, that it doesn't matter if the majority is against something. If one person wants to be able to freely express themselves, they should be allowed, that the majority should not be allowed to shut them down. And that has been a premise for so many Supreme Court cases that involve civil rights, that the majority cannot overrule the free expression of even just one person. No, that's just not allowable. And it also kind of reminds me of something that Bayard Rustin also said many, many times, is that there can be no equality as long as there is one group being ostracized or condemned or discriminated against by another group within the larger society. So it's important that no matter how you identify, it's really important to support everybody's effort toward achieving equal rights. Because as long as one group is a target, there is no equal right for anyone. We're all susceptible. So that was, I think, a really important thing coming out, in this book. So despite it being something, that was published in 1981, this edition was actually published in 1995, but, from the early 1980s. And it was also shortly after, the time period reflected in this book is a time period shortly after when I was attending high school. So I enjoyed the read, and I still think, despite its date, it's still a useful and relevant read for today. So those were 3 quick reads as I am putting books away, and now I'm contemplating, okay, what's my next read going to be? I don't know. We'll see, and I'll probably be letting you all know when that is determined. I hope you enjoyed this. Hey, leave a comment in the down under. I enjoy getting the comments. Hit the thumbs up button, the like button, please. That helps tremendously. You should be doing that anyway with any video that you watch. And if you like it, then hit the thumbs up button, because that really does help the content creator get greater and wider distribution of their content. Subscribe if you like, if you haven't. But even if you've already subscribed, hitting the like button is a very powerful way to show support. I am also, can be found on Instagram as NewsDude76. That's NEWZDUDE76. And I have a Facebook page called Calvin Wazoo. That's focused on music-related content, videos I create about records and record collecting, and also other videos and articles I find about music. And I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to see you again soon. And always remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.